Roland D'Souza is an honorary fellow of the Institute of Architects, Pakistan. He is the principal electrical engineer of Fahim, Nanji and D'Souza, a 25-year-old multidisciplinary consulting firm in the field of building services engineering, and a fellow of the Institution of Engineers, Pakistan, and the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers, Pakistan. He is active in environmental advocacy with SHERI, Citizens for a Better Environment, and human rights promotion with the Human Rights Commission of Pakistan. I'd now like to invite Roland D'Souza up on stage. Thank you.
Fellow professionals, good afternoon. I'm going to be discussing something today that is rather a favorite topic of mine. Some of you may have heard some of it before. And you may have read about it in the papers. You may have seen movies about it. But we don't really believe most of it. And that is why I felt this was a good opportunity to talk to a group of professionals whose actions and thoughts have a great influence on this subject. The subject of how long and how well this planet of ours is going to survive. As college graduates, a pointer? Top or? Okay, thank you. As college graduates, architects and other related building professionals are part of a very select group in this world. I was surprised to learn that 1% of the world is a college graduate, of the world. And with the kind of education levels that we have in Pakistan, it's probably much less than that. Therefore, our responsibility to understand the issues, communicate them to other people, and implement them in everything that we do is very important. I'm going to have to learn how to operate this. The OECD is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. It's a group of 34 countries that was set up a long time ago, probably 30, 40 years ago, to promote development and free trade. Pakistan is not a member. It consists generally of the richer countries of the world. And they have just put out a report, probably a month ago, and here is an extract from the blurb on the internet. It says, humanity has witnessed unprecedented growth and prosperity in the past decades. With the size of the world economy more than tripling and population increasing by over 3 billion since 1970, over the last 40 years, our economy has tripled and we have increased 3 billion people in the world. This growth, however, has been accompanied by environmental pollution and natural resource depletion. The current growth model and the mismanagement of natural assets could ultimately undermine human development. This undermine human development is an understatement. Why is the environment degrading? There are essentially two reasons and a third related reason. One is that the population has increased and is increasing at a tremendous rate. You'll be surprised to know that although man has been around in some form for maybe 6 million years, up to 200 years ago, the population of this world was only 1 billion. So around 1800, the population of the world was 1 billion. And today, we are at 7 billion. When I was born in 1951, it was 2.5 billion. The report that we just alluded to says that it has increased by 3 billion over the last 40 years. The second thing is the rising standards of life. When I compare myself to my father, who didn't own a car, didn't use air conditioning, didn't travel by airplane, and lived a very simple life, I find that my consumption is 10 times his. And when I look at my sons, one of them lives in Los Angeles and takes a weekend trip to Chicago to attend the engagement ceremony of a class fellow. And everything else he does is on that level. His consumption is 10 times mine. This world just cannot take it. The third thing is the increasing inequities that have been generated. The poor are getting poorer, and the rich are getting richer, and the poor are having children. That is the story of the world. Now we need to do something about this, not because it's ideal and because it's a good thing to do, but in our own self-interest, because otherwise we are heading towards a doomsday scenario. Let's look at population. I just gave you some facts and figures. This is the situation when man became an agriculturalist from being a hunter-gatherer. Before this, before 10,000 BC, he just wandered around in the forests and picked up stuff off the trees, off the bushes, killed a couple of rabbits or deer, and fed himself. He existed in groups of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 people. There were no villages, there were no cities, there were no towns, there were no governments, there were no architects, there were no engineers, there were no kings, there were no priests. There were just people walking around in the jungle. 2,000 years ago, the world population was 150 million. In 1800, it was 1 billion. 1951, when I was born, it was 2.5 billion. In 2011, it became 7 billion, which is where we are right now. And the OECD projects that unless something is done about this, we are going to be at 9 billion. All of those people out there consuming. This is another graph over a period of 250 years, from the start of the Industrial Revolution in 1750 to the year 2000. And these graphs trace the consumption of all of these items. Now, the paper you have been given has got a number of references where the originals of all of these graphs are given, and you can find them and read about it. Take a look at cars. This is when cars started, about 1900. Look how they have moved up. And if you notice, most of the increase in consumption has taken place over the last 50 years. So although it did start moving up, most of it has occurred over here. Population, which was here, is now somewhere here, because this was 2000 and we are now into 2011. It's 1 billion more. Peace and environment. In 2007, the Nobel Prize for Peace was given to two environmentalists. One was Al Gore for his Inconvenient Truth video, and the other was the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Now we say, what is the connection between environment and peace? For those of you who have not, you must download Living Planet Report, see An Inconvenient Truth, and download this report called The National Security and the Threat of Climate Change. References again given in the paper. Now, this group is a think tank in America composed of retired US generals. Remember, generals are not environmentalists. They know to go and destroy the enemy and kill the people. But they put out a report in 2007 and they warned the Bush government, saying that unless you tackle climate change and do something about it, the factors that have exacerbated terrorism in the world will continue to increase. And who knows more about terrorism than we do? Why are we in Pakistan today suffering the ill effects of all kinds of terrorism, whether it be religious, sectarian, or anything? WWF, another big environmental group, publishes a report every 2 years. 2010 was the last one. 2012, October, they'll publish the update. And their report is a kind of an annual statement of accounts. I'm sure all the architects, all the professionals out here run businesses, and they have a statement of accounts. They know how much is coming in. They know how much they're spending. They know what they're spending it on. They know how much is left over, where the profit is. It's necessary to know something about that. But we are running this world without really knowing this. We don't know how much we are producing. We don't know how much we are spending. Are we overspending, or what are we doing? So WWF decided to put out this Living Planet report, which again is available on the internet. The address is given in there. And they find that we are using the Earth's resources faster than they can be renewed. Expenditure is greater than income. This has been going on since 1986, almost 25 years ago. And the present extent of over-expenditure is 50%. So what we need to do is actually reverse this process. We'll show you some graphs after this. We need to balance our consumption with our production. Whatever we do today will have a long impact over the years for a great amount of time. Here are some figures that I've chosen from that report. The first column, which is biocapacity, is like the income. The eco-footprint is the expenditure. Okay? So the first row says that the Earth has a biocapacity of 2.1 global hectares per person. The figure right in the top left-hand corner. Here. This one. And we have a footprint of the world of 2.7. So in 2008, it was 29%. We were using 25% more than we were generating. Pakistan has a very low biocapacity, 0.4, but still we are using 100% more. India is about the same as we are. China has a higher capacity. Again, it's using 233%. The USA, who's probably one of the most wasteful societies, has got a very high capacity, but its expenditure is very high, 188%. But the world champion is the UAE. And what do? We go to the UAE and we say, why don't you come to Pakistan? Show us how this is done. Show us how we can develop projects using resources that we don't have. How can we overuse our resources and become like you? Let's look at economic growth in Pakistan. In 2006, one of the height years of the Musharraf regime, economic growth was 6% of GDP. But in the same year, the World Bank put out a report, again, the references in that paper, showing that ecological degradation was also 6%. So what does this mean? On the one hand, we are going forward 6%, and on the other hand, we are going back 6%. But there's a further aspect to this. All the development that occurred most of it went into your pocket and to mine. It went into the pockets of the rich. And the 6% degradation went on the poor, which means that the gap between the rich and the poor continues to widen. The situation today is worse. One, the economic growth has reduced to about 3.5%, and the degradation has increased to beyond 7%. So now we are not only standing still, we are actually going backwards. The gap between the haves and the have-nots, as it widens, will increase crime, terrorism, and social instability. And that is something that we can see in the city of Karachi. This is something else from the WWF report. They have shown in 1961, the green countries are the ones that had more than they spent. And over a period of just over 40 years, look at the change. At that time, even America was green. India was red. Pakistan was green, 1961. Today, more and more of the center is turned red. This is the graph showing consumption. The horizontal line is the amount of income that we have, and we have now exceeded that. The triangular red area is the debt. This is the suggestion of WWF. We have got to change and come down. Now that's a little easier said than done. We have to make choices. What is development and what is sustainable development? Rich countries will have to limit and reduce prosperity. Poor countries will have to limit development. We must stop believing that greater well-being means greater consumption. The question today is, what can we as building professionals do? And it is not enough to do a few things, like let's put in some conservation measures in the buildings that we design. Or let us encourage some solar energy. Because that is not enough. That is not enough. If you read certain books, certain newspaper articles which are coming out more and more frequently now, the projections are very dismal. And a structural change is required if mankind is to survive. There's a very famous British scientist who says, or predicts, that by the year 2100, the population of the world will be 1 billion. He says 1 in 7 will survive. Now, I presume that none of us will be here in 2100, but I'm sure our children and our grandchildren will be. So we've got to decide what sort of a heritage, what sort of a legacy do we want to leave for them. What can architects do? Educate clients on climate change and environmental issues. Now, before you educate somebody else, you've got to know it yourself. So it means you've got to study, you've got to inquire, you've got to find out. How bad is the situation? Is this a Chicken Little story where Chicken Little runs around saying, the sky is falling, or is there some truth in it? We've got to design to reduce, mitigate, and cope with the adverse effects of climate change. Climate change is a big killer. It's a cancer that is affecting the society, and people are not even aware of it. We've got to keep our buildings small, simple, and effective. We've got to cut down on overconsumption. We've got to encourage clients to invest in improving efficiency, eliminating waste, and reducing energy use. In November last year, the International Energy Agency said that this problem of climate change has a very small window during which we can act. Because remember, a building that you design today will be in there for the next 50 to 60 years. It will be consuming energy, it will be doing a lot of things. So unless you design that today, and unless the buildings, they define this window as 5 years, they say within the next 5 years, whatever one does will have a lock-in effect, and we will be subject to its consequences over the rest of time. We've got to learn to apply daylight. We've got to learn to apply artificial light. I must confess that even artificial light application, if you talk to people, they're talking about densities of 1.5, 2 watts per square foot. ASHRAE, a standard that is used in America, is now recommending for office buildings 0.9, less than 1 watt per square foot. These are the areas that we can work on to try and save energy. The buildings we design have got to be correctly oriented, insulated, leakages eliminated, properly shaded, ventilated, and naturally cooled if possible. The materials that we use in construction, their effect on global warming has got to be a minimum. It would be great to import stuff from Italy or import it from America, but just the transport of that thing from there to here consumes carbon, puts in pollution into the air. So can we think about doing things more simply? We've got to economize on water, a major problem in Pakistan, and recycle effluents. We've got to help redefine architectural and planning codes. This, of course, is the recommendations up to now have been for architects in particular, but there are recommendations that one can do generally. You've got to study the ecological problems. You've got to spread the message to other people. And we deal with people all the time. We deal with government. We deal with policy makers. Architects are a group that have a lot of in to the people in power. We teach. We meet other citizens, educate them all the time. We've got to become familiar with the environmental laws. We have got to work on environment first in every single thing that we do. We have got to promote environmental accountability. EIA hearings. EIA hearings are announced in the papers so often. How many people come for them? They deal with the major roads in cities. They deal with overpasses. They deal with transport systems. They deal with factories. They deal with large buildings. And architects and building professionals know about this. They know what is bad and what is good. And you must stand up and speak. You must encourage control and reduction of population. A major problem for Pakistan. Pakistan's population has increased 6-fold since Pakistan came into existence. You have got to modify your personal lifestyle. After all, you cannot promote something without following it yourself. You've got to look for political parties who have a sustainable environmental manifesto. Now, I realize that in Pakistan that's a little difficult because in Pakistan, all political parties don't have any manifesto at all. So whether it's sustainable or non-sustainable is not the point. But if there is somebody, support the guy. In 2009, Ban Ki-moon, the UN Secretary General, went to the Arctic and then attended an environmental conference in Switzerland, Geneva. This is a statement of his. Our foot is stuck on the accelerator and we are heading towards an abyss. Now, I don't think there can be a more powerful statement than that. We have got to study this, we've got to understand it. You, as one of that 1% in this world, can make the difference. You, as an architect practicing in Pakistan, you can create this bridge to the people of this country, to the policymakers of this country. You can start a movement to simplify, to consume less, to enable us and the rest of the world to live a little longer. Thank you very much.